is absurd for men to assert that all is well, while wicked and corrupt men are seeking our destruction by a perversion of sacred things. For all is not well, while whoredoms and all manner of abominations are practiced under the cloak of religion. Lo, the wolf is in the fold, arrayed in sheep's clothing, and is spreading death and devastation among the saints. Nauvoo Expositor, June 7th, 1844.
Welcome to Breaking Cults, a podcast where we're going to challenge the popular narratives surrounding cults. In this series, we're going to be dismantling the false dichotomy that separates oppressors from the oppressed. We're going to explore the gray areas of power, agency, and control. In the first half of this episode, we're going to look into Mormonism in popular culture. In the second half of the episode, we're going to look at women's agency in polygamous cults. Today, we'll be talking about early Mormonism, and then I want to clarify the distinction between, of course, fundamentalist Mormonism and the mainstream Mormonism. I've spent nearly a decade studying Mormonism. It's a faith that is inseparably woven into my identity, my family history. Their story is my family's story. While I aim to shed light on the more complex, uncomfortable parts of that history, I also have deep respect for them. I'm not interested in reducing the past to a simple dichotomy of critical theories, oppressor and the oppressed. I'm not going to erase the contributions of my ancestors due to their flaws. Simple as. Understanding the full picture allows us to engage with history in a way that honors the complexities of human experience. Growing up around Mormonism, though not as a member myself, I've always been connected to this history. My own journey into studying Mormonism began during my senior year of high school. I picked the topic for my World Religions project. Growing up non-religious in Utah, I had always viewed mainstream Mormonism as a kind of quirky branch of Christianity. That's not quite true, but maybe we'll have to get into that in a future episode, the connections between Mormonism and Freemasonry. My dad grew up in the church, and his side of the family traces its roots back to Mormonism's founding. I started studying cults as a hobby in about approximately 2020 during the COVID cult, which began with a theory I developed called fashionable politics, using wokeism as like a little handbag, and that's gonna need a whole episode of its own. 2022, I wrote a deep dive article on Mormon history. I was writing in the context of the 1844 presidential election. I discussed Freemasonry and its connection to the founding of Mormonism, the anti-Mason movement, and the founding of the Republican Party in opposition to polygamy and slavery, Joseph Smith's presidential ambitions, and his burning of the printing press called the Nauvoo Expositor, all leading to a series of unfortunate events, culminating in Smith's assassination at the hands of an angry mob, thus making U.S. history as the first presidential candidate to ever be assassinated. That history offers a rich backdrop for the discussion at hand. It's obviously more complicated than this, but 70% of all cult followers worldwide are women. A cult is essentially a dysfunctional social group. That can be anything from like a religion to a multi-level marketing scheme. So in that article that I wrote, I had made a joke about referencing Mom Talk that was unfolding at the time. I joked that a new reality television show about Mormon swinger moms was soon to be on the way. Lo and behold, there is the brand new show. They started talking about how they're fighting the patriarchy. I guess I should have seen that coming, so I'm like, okay, whatever. Didn't watch past the first episode. They're trying to kind of coax it in even like some social justice language of like, we're swinger moms because we're fighting the patriarchy. Those kids are gonna have rough lives. I saw your mom on the swinger show. They're, walking hand in hand in front of a Mormon temple, wearing these, matching light blue outfits that are alluding to, Handmaid's Tale. And the song Unholy is playing. I'm not even Mormon, but I was just, kind of sacrilegious. Apparently there's more the drama and whatever, and tea. I mean, if that's like your thing, I guess that's what you're gonna get. The show's not a serious inquiry into the hidden parts of Mormon culture. You'd be more likely to find that here on the Breaking Cults podcast. Gotta do a plug. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Let me know what you think in the comments of the episode. But for people who aren't familiar with Mormonism, they don't know how to sift through. They just don't have the proper context to understand it, in its full complexity. These shows kind of made for a voyeuristic audience to kind of look in on Utah, fetishize the Latter-day Saints, Hollyweird, subverting and demoralizing Mormons. Could have a whole episode on the cult of Hollyweird, brain rot, reality television to placate the masses. But despite all the jokes that I make about Mormons and Mormonism, they do build strong families and close-knit communities. Salt Lake has an international airport, so it's a major city just like any other. You're not going to get mugged in Utah walking past, an open drug encampment on the lawn of the state capitol. That's just not going to happen. So Mormons are doing something right. The same for which cannot be said about other major cities around the country. So that's why, everyone is fleeing to Utah in droves since 2020. I suspect what's happening is that all these entertainment industry folks are coming into contact with Mormonism and Mormon lore. We're seeing this explosion of Mormon-themed television and cinema over the past few years. There was Under the Banner of Heaven, which was a good show. Keep Sweet, so on. I just went and saw the movie Heretic. I was disappointed. And, it looked promising. The beginning was really good. The beginning, kind of the middle. The old man was, dropping these red pills about Mormonism. He's talking about Fanny Alger. The ending, though, a little bit of spoiler here, but it was definitely about, Luciferianism. There's the two missionary girls, right? One is, at this point, he's killed one of them. He's killed the bad Mormon, right? She was kind of, color-coded as, the bad Mormon. He's asking the goody two-shoes, the other missionary girl, because his house is a maze, and it's designed like Dante's Inferno. So they've been descending into his house. So he asks her to enter the lowest level of his maze, right? So there's a trapdoor. He tells her, that down there she's gonna find the one true religion. I'm not gonna say what all she found down there, but there's all this subliminal messages and Hollyweird. No, it's just open, occultic symbols and goat horns, goat skull. Really called it control. The root of all religions is control, and it was actually less about Mormonism than I thought it was gonna be. I thought that was gonna be maybe more central to the plot, This is kind of what I'm getting at with the consumption of people who aren't Mormon, but also don't live in Utah and have no contact with these people and don't know what they're like in real life and don't know really anything about the church. They kept making the magic underwear joke. Okay, do you have any other jokes besides magic underwear? It's almost like dud here. I guess it's a horror movie. I was just expecting more. It promised itself to be intellectual horror. I could vibe with that. As I was working on this episode, the Mormon missionaries came back. My husband thought he scared him off last time. Maybe they could sense me talking about them in the ether. They've been trying to recruit me into the church since I was a child. And they will continue to try to recruit me until the day that I die. And beyond. They'll just baptize me into the Mormon church after I'm already dead. And I'm just going to go right into the subject of this half of the episode. We're going to talk about early Mormonism, as we kind of discussed a little bit of the history at the very beginning of the episode. We're going to continue with a short bit about the Nauvoo Expositor, which is the printing press that Joseph Smith burned because they said he was a polygamist.
It is a notorious fact that many females in foreign climes, and in countries to us unknown, even in the most distant regions of the Eastern Hemisphere, have been induced by the sound of the gospel to forsake friends and embark upon a voyage across waters that lie stretched over the greater portion of the globe, as they supposed, to glorify God. that they might thereby stand acquitted in the great day of God Almighty. But what is taught them on their arrival at this place? For there are great blessings awaiting the righteous, and that God has great mysteries in store for those who love the Lord and cling to Brother Joseph. They are also notified that Brother Joseph will see them soon and reveal the mysteries of heaven to their full understanding, which seldom fails to inspire them with new confidence in the prophet, as well as a great anxiety to know what God has laid up in store for them. In return for the great sacrifice of father of mother, of gold and silver, which they gladly left far behind, that they might be gathered into the fold and numbered among the chosen of God. They are visited again, and what is the result? They are requested to meet Brother Joseph, or some of the 12, at some insulated point, or at some particularly described palsy on the bank of the Mississippi, or at some room, which wears upon its front, positively no admittance. The harmless, inoffensive, and unsuspecting creatures are so devoted to the prophet and the cause of Jesus Christ that they do not dream of the deep-laid and fatal scheme which prostrates happiness and renders death itself desirable. But they meet him, expecting to receive through him a blessing, and learn the will of the Lord concerning them, and what awaits the faithful follower of Joseph, the apostle and prophet of God. They are told, after having been sworn, to never divulge what is revealed to them, with a penalty of death attached, that God Almighty has revealed it to him, that she should be his, Joseph's, spiritual wife.
Mormon apologetics are always trying to reframe his actions as a product of their time. The excuses are endless. Human lifespans were shorter, couples got married earlier, courtship norms were different back then. But you know what? Yeah, let's truly analyze his actions within the context of his time, in what essentially amounted to property theft, right? Smith was frequently circumventing the accepted social norm of seeking a father's blessing. And this is far from the romanticized portrait that's painted of him. You know, and Mormonism itself even warns of making secret oaths and covenants. Really ironic is Mormonism itself is built on the foundation of secret oaths and covenants. The historical records of Joseph Smith's style of courtship was highly coercive, to say the very least. He leveraged his position within the community to not only gain the compliance of the women and girls that he pursued, but also to destroy the reputations of those who came forward about his polygamy, which was illegal. Joseph Smith was not only the religious leader of the Mormon community, but he was also the mayor of Nauvoo. In addition to that, he was the highest-ranking official in the Mormon militia, called the Nauvoo Legion. And on top of all of that, he was running for president of the United States. So one of the most common misconceptions about polygamy in these cults is that the men are fed grapes. You know, they're fanned with palm leaves, also while getting a handy and being fed a sandwich by their many wives. But nothing could be further from the truth. Within a cult setting, polygamy is used to control not only the women but also the men. If the cult grants wives, the cult can also take them away and your children on a whim. Imagine the pain of being excommunicated and shunned from a community that you've spent your entire life in. It's all you've ever known because you've been isolated from the outside world since your birth. You've been taught to fear outsiders, and now in an instant, everything is gone. Your family, your identity, your sense of purpose, it's all been ripped away, leaving you with completely nothing, alone, with the shirt on your back. These young men and boys may not even be able to read or write, having been trafficked into labor at a young age. Another misconception is that the men don't have any love for their children or wives. Really imagine that threat, the threat of everything you've ever known taken, constantly hanging over your head, coercing your compliance and conformity within the group. Young men get expelled from the community under false pretenses. This is to eliminate mating threats. Men and women are born in equal numbers. A 50-50% chance. So this leads to an epidemic of Utah's lost boys who've been kicked out of their isolated fundamentalist Mormon communities. In reality, the average man in a polygamous cult is just as trapped as the women. They may appear to be in charge, especially if you're looking at it through a critical theory lens, where everything is just either being oppressed or is oppressing. There's no room for nuance. The power is conditional and precarious. The system is designed to keep them in line through the constant threat of losing everything: their wives, their children, their place in the community. If they step out of line or question the leadership, they'll be cast out and shunned. The leaders can just turn their wives and children against them. They'll lose not just their family, but their entire support network. A cult's control is so deeply ingrained that it can compel mothers to go against their own children and wives to support the expulsion of their husbands. Family bonds are weaponized. The system isn't just about controlling women, it's about controlling everyone. It's a twisted, self-perpetuating system where everyone is trapped, but the chains are all psychological and social, and the lines between oppressor and the oppressed are blurred. The control a cult has over the human mind is so powerful that a mother will choose a cult over her own children. Imagine a psychological pull so powerful as to cause a mother to suppress that biological instinct. The need to stay within the safety net of the herd is that powerful to the ancient part of our psyche and the essential human need to belong. They then become instruments of the cult's power, enforcing the rules via social exclusion in a way that's really not too far removed from little girls on the playground. And it's not just socialization. There has to be a biological element. Women make up 70% of all cult members worldwide. If female followers simply collectively ceased supporting and upholding those male cult leaders, they'd lose all of their power, and they implement the shunning and excommunication of righteous men from their dysfunctional social groups. These men who dare challenge the cultic system which entangles them all are cast out as the scapegoat by the very women bound by its social rules. There's obviously something deeply not only biological but psychological here at play, and it's not really being researched or talked about because of how deeply politically incorrect it all is. Feminism has this thought-stopping cliche that feminism is for men too, but we can never talk about men's issues. And if you do, it's like, oh, here comes the pick-me brigade. You try to talk about men just dropping out of society, and then they have another thought-stopping cliche: the future is female. Boo-hoo, men. I mean, the over-medication of little boys in the public school system, for one thing, because they can't sit still all day in a classroom. They want to get out and move. Wokeism doesn't care about men's issues. Women are statistically more susceptible to cults and dysfunctional social groups than men, but cult leaders tend to be men. Women are proven to be more religious than men. It's not a matter of intelligence. It's more so the need to belong to the group. The women in these cults act as enforcers, carrying out the directives of the men in power. The expulsion of dissenting men has always been a recurring theme throughout the entirety of Mormon history. It is woven into the very fabric of the religion, a religion of obedience and compliance. Joseph Smith excommunicated his own presidential running mate, Sidney Rigdon. This was after Rigdon, who was an opponent of polygamy, publicly confronted Smith about creeping on his daughter. Rigdon, who was a high-ranking member of the church, was accused of making up lies and conspiring with anti-Mormons against Joseph Smith. So the leaders at the top used polygamy in early Mormonism and in the fundamentalist sects today to reward loyalty to the system with more wives, while simultaneously using the constant looming threat of expulsion to manage dissent and keep the lower ranked men in check. The reality of Mormonism is bizarre enough as it is, without the sensationalism. And that's what you're going to find here on the Breaking Cults podcast. Got a lot planned, future episodes I'm gonna do. I have been thinking about starting up this podcast all semester. What do you think? Are women victims, enforcers, or both in these systems? Let me know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode of Breaking Cults.